Hello again, this is Andy Nicol, the course tutor for the Perfectly Spoken Advanced course, and in this lesson, which is lesson 52 on the course, we'll be looking at vocabulary and looking at expressions related to age. So as I said, this is lesson 52, it's a C1 level lesson. That's if you're the Common European Framework, Cambridge exams and so on, or if you're more familiar with IELTS, it's a more or less 7.5 on the IELTS scale. So in this lesson we're going to look at the following areas: different life stages such as infancy, middle age and so on. We'll be looking at phrasal verbs related to age and life, for example, grow up and pass away and so on. And then we'll be looking at idiomatic expressions associated with age. So first of all, here we'll be looking at the life stages. And if you can think for a minute and try to work out what life stage is depicted in each photo or each image. Okay, so we've got the following stages: adulthood, old age, adolescence, that's 4 syllables, stress on the third, adolescence, infancy, middle age and childhood. So have a look at the first picture. You can see a mother putting her child into the cot to sleep. So it's obviously a baby. So which stage in life is depicted here? Is it adulthood, old age, adolescence, infancy, middle age or childhood? Pause the recording at any time if you need time to think. And of course this is infancy. Infancy is the period when you are either a baby or a toddler. A toddler is a small child who's just learned to walk. Toddler. Okay, here's the second one. And we've got again a young child. She seems to be having a tantrum where she's obviously not getting her own way, not getting what she wants. So which period of life is depicted here? You've got adulthood, old age, adolescence, middle age and childhood. And of course the answer here is childhood. Childhood. After you're a baby or a toddler, you are a child. Okay, here's the next one. It's a very typical scene. We've got a young girl, a teenager, and her mum is obviously having a go at her because she's stayed out too late or she's not doing her homework or for whatever reason. Tends to be a difficult period in our lives where we often have problems with our parents and so on. So which period of life is depicted here? We've got adulthood, old age, adolescence and middle age. And the answer is adolescence. In fact, the word adolescent is a synonym of teenager. So we're talking about 13 to 19, essentially, 18, 19. Okay, so after you're a teenager, you grow up and you become, hopefully you go to university and you become independent, etc. Depending on the country, of course. In some countries children stay with their parents until they're in their 30s and so on. But anyway, so in your 20s, 30s, etc., which period of life is represented here? And the answer is adulthood. Adulthood. And you are of course an adult. Okay, next one. So you're still an adult obviously, but now you're getting on a bit, getting a bit older. You're in your mid 40s, 45, etc. to 60, 65. So we call this middle age, and the adjective is middle-aged. This man is middle-aged. Okay, and finally, it's the last one left, obviously. You've got an elderly woman who seems to be still working. Increasingly, people are having to work into the late 60s, 70s even, as the pension age keeps going up. And this is, of course, old age. So she's not a pensioner herself, but most people of this age are pensioners. They don't work, they receive a pension from the state or a private pension or whatever. Old age. Okay, so those are life stages. Now I want to turn to and look at phrasal verbs, verbs associated with stages of our lives and so on. So, here's the first one. We've got the phrasal verbs bring up, end up, grow up, name after, take after, and turn out. So the first sentence, he was born in 1972 and blank his paternal grandfather. Paternal grandfather is the father of his father, the dad of his dad. And here we're looking for the phrasal verb meaning he was given the same name. For example, his grandfather's called John and he is being called John because his grandfather was John. And the answer is, obviously it's in the past, so we need to change the verb, named after. He was born in 1972 and named after his paternal grandfather. My sister is very patient and something our mother. So she's patient. This is a personality adjective, a character adjective. She's very patient, so she's very similar in character, not physically, but in character, well perhaps physically too, but this is not what it means. She's similar in character to her mother or to our mother. She takes after our mother. Okay, if it's physical we tend to use the verb looks like. She looks like her mother. Takes after is more to do with personality. Okay, number 3. His parents died when he was quite young, and so he was something by his grandparents. So this means that they looked after him as if they were his parents. They gave him food, shelter, well, a place to stay. They took him to school, etc. He was brought up, past of bring up, brought up by his grandparents. This is the first one, bring up. Okay, number 4. She had a very difficult childhood. Obviously, I don't know, she was perhaps very aggressive, or she stole things or whatever, and as a result she was taken into care. She ended up leaving the family home and ended up in care. Ended up is the phrasal verb, ended up. Number 5. My dad, something in the country, but moved to the city when he was in his 20s. So it means that he spent his childhood and possibly adolescence, well in this case yes, his adolescence in the country, but then moved to the city when he was in his 20s. You spend your childhood and adolescence somewhere, you grew up there. My dad grew up in the country. And the last one, number 6. Your son has something blank to be a very polite young man because of the way you brought him up. As a result, he is now a very polite young man. He has turned out to be a very polite young man. Okay, let's look at some more. Okay, so we've got become of, drop out, hand down, live up to, pass away, and pass for. And you've got a picture of a young man graduating from university there. So the first one, Jenny's mum could Something, her sister. They really look alike, and her mum doesn't look her age at all. In other words, people could easily believe that Jenny's mum was her sister. She's very similar and obviously looks a lot younger than she actually is. So Jenny's mum could pass for her sister. People could believe that she was her sister. She could pass for her sister. Number 2. I wonder what's something, Denise, after all these years, I wish we'd kept in touch. Obviously you've lost contact with her, so you're wondering how she is, how her life has progressed, what has happened to her since the last time you saw her, what she's doing now. I wonder what's become of Denise after all these years. What's she doing? What's she up to? Number 3. I'm glad I didn't something of university like some of my friends. I went on to get a first-class honours degree. So some of my friends decided that they didn't want to stay in university, so they left university, possibly to get a job, etc. They didn't finish their degree, their course. The answer is drop out. I'm happy I didn't drop out of university like some of my friends. This is a verb. There's also a noun. A college or university dropout is a person who doesn't finish their course. Very often phrasal verbs can be transformed into nouns. For example, my car broke down last week. And also a breakdown is the noun taken from to break down. Okay, so this often happens. Phrasal verbs can become nouns. Number 4. I hardly ever got new clothes when I was young. Instead, I always got clothes something to me from my older sisters. So my parents didn't go and buy me new clothes. They simply gave me the clothes that, no, this is obviously a woman talking, gave her sister's clothes instead. And the answer is handed down. I got clothes handed down to me. My sister's, in this case, older sister's clothes. Number 5. I hate having to something my parents' expectations. Nothing is ever good enough for them. So your parents here have very high hopes and expectations for you. They want you to study hard. They want you to get a good education or a good job, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so these are expectations very high. So if you have to try to realize these expectations, to follow what your parents want, etc., the answer is live up to. I hate having to live up to my parents' expectations. Often parents put a lot of pressure on their children to succeed, and sometimes it's not appreciated. Children can feel pressured and so on. Okay, and finally, number 6. My grandmother, something last month. It's going to be a long time before I get over the loss. This is a very polite way of saying she died, and the answer is passed away. Passed away means died in a very polite way. Okay, so that's phrasal verbs. Let's move on then to some idiomatic expressions about age. Idioms, age idioms. These are all related to age, life, etc. And in this case, we have to match the word or phrase to its meaning. So here's the first one. At the tender age of 6, my son already knew how to use the tablet. Increasingly, this is becoming more and more common. We talk about digital natives. These are people who have been born into a world with mobile phones and tablets, etc. They don't know anything different. I mean, I still remember telephones which had a dial and you had to go shh, 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 like this with the phone when you wanted to phone someone. But there are young people now who've grown up with mobile phones, etc. So at the tender age of 6, my son already knew how to use the tablet. Is it A, a sarcastic expression to allow someone to go before you, suggesting that they're a lot older than you? B, the most amazing period in history? C, a surprisingly young age? D, a surprisingly old age? E, don't be so childish, don't be so immature? And F, an extremely long time. So at the tender age of 6, pause the recording if you need time to think, obviously, and the correct answer is, sorry, there's the little boy with the tablet there, and the correct answer is, of course, C, a surprisingly young age, the tender age of 6. It's surprising for you that he's so young and yet he knows how to use a tablet. Okay, next one. You can go in first if you like. Go ahead. Age before beauty. The expression age before beauty. What do we mean here? And the answer is A. It's a sarcastic expression to allow someone to go before you, suggesting that they're a lot older than you. Okay, and perhaps not as attractive as you as well. It's often said in a comical, light-hearted way, age before beauty. One shouldn't be too offended by it. Okay, the next one. Stop being so silly. Act your age, sorry, not your shoe size, or just act your age on its own. So we've got the most amazing period in history, surprisingly old age, don't be so childish, an extremely long time, and of course act your age means don't be so childish, grow up. Okay, don't be so immature. I haven't, sorry, I should say, seen Deborah in donkey's ages. I think I might give her a ring. I think I might call her. I haven't seen Deborah in donkey's ages. So what is the meaning of donkey's ages? Is it the most amazing period in history, surprisingly old age, or an extremely long time? And of course, it's F, an extremely long time, donkey's ages. We can also reduce this to just donkeys. I haven't seen her in donkeys. Obviously, these idiomatic expressions are very informal. My gran had a really full life and lived to the ripe old age of 95. So we've got the most amazing period in history, or surprisingly old age. Of course, it's a surprisingly old age, the ripe old age of 95. And so, of course, the last one, with so many incredible players, some people suggest we are living through the golden age of tennis. As I speak, we have people like still Federer, Roger Federer, Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, Andy Murray in the men's game, the Williams sisters in women's tennis, and so on. So we are referring to the most amazing period in history in terms of tennis. Okay. Of course, it can be used in any context, the golden age of, in terms of music, of politics, etc. The golden age. Okay, now we've got some more. My grandfather, or my granddad, finds it difficult to use new technology. I suppose you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And you've got an old man there with an old dog. So what's the meaning of the expression, you can't teach an old dog new tricks? Does it mean nowadays having a youthful spirit despite being quite old? Too old? It's almost impossible for older people to learn new things? Is it a myth, an invented story or belief, or is it a story which depicts the challenges of passing from youth to childhood, sorry, to adulthood, beg your pardon? And of course, it is D. It's almost impossible or really difficult for older people to learn new things. They may be very set in their ways. It's another expression you can use to mean it's do things a certain way and find it difficult to change, to adapt, and so on. It's not necessarily true, but this is what this expression means. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Second one, in this day and age, it's not acceptable for men to treat women that way. Okay? What is the meaning of in this day and age? Obviously, at the moment, in terms of political situation, you have the Me Too movement in America and elsewhere about women demanding to be treated better by men and so on. So, in this day and age refers to nowadays, in the current period. What a lot of nonsense. That's nothing but an old wives' tale. What's the meaning of the expression, an old wives' tale? Is it having a youthful spirit, too old, a myth or invented story or belief, a story which depicts the challenges of passing from youth to adulthood, and of course it's E, an invented story, a myth, or invented story or belief, an old wives' tale. Perhaps these days would be considered a bit sexist as well, an old wives' tale. Anyway, the next one. The film is a coming-of-age tale about a young boy finding out the hard way that life's, I should say, no picnic, not on, no picnic. That life's not easy. And a coming-of-age tale is F, a story or film or whatever that shows a person growing up, going from their youth to adulthood and the difficulties and challenges they face. A coming-of-age tale. I'm afraid I won't be coming on that ride with you. It's in a theme park, for example, going on a roller coaster or some such ride. I'm a bit too long in the tooth, so I'm not going to go on that ride with you. I'm too long in the tooth means I'm far too old. Too old. Long in the tooth on its own just means old, so too long in the tooth means too old, obviously. And finally, my grandparents are still young at heart and love to go on adventure holidays. Young at heart means having a youthful spirit, being, in terms of your spirit, a lot younger than you actually are. Okay, so that's the end of today's lesson. In the next lesson, we're going to look at the following. This is lesson 53, and it's the subject of distance. And again, we looked at this in lesson 51. So we're looking at words like apparently and so on, adverbs and adverbials. So it's lesson 53 with me, Andy Nicol. So I hope that you found this lesson useful and that you have familiarized yourself with this new vocabulary to do with age and so on. So I look forward to speaking to you again in the next lesson. Thanks for listening, and bye-bye for now.